Hey there guys, before we start this video, I want to let you know that all scripted videos will be migrated to the new channel, Professor Bass. I've already uploaded all the compare and contrast videos to the new channel and all future episodes will be uploaded on that channel. I will upload 3 more videos of compare and contrast for this channel as a heads up, but after the 3rd episode, every future compare and contrast episode will be uploaded on Professor Bass. I hope you guys understand and enjoyed this video. Hey there guys, depression didn't get me just yet, so I guess it's time for another episode of compare and contrast. So, what are we reviewing today? The f***, I thought we already reviewed this game. Man, this really is the first time I'm revisiting a game for an episode, huh? If you follow this series, you should know I've already talked about Battle for Bikini Bottom already in my Battle for Bikini Bottom vs. movie comparison. I've concluded that while both games can be fun, I found Battle for Bikini Bottom a better product as the movie game doesn't really hold up when compared to its predecessor. Now, this review was made before Rehydrated was announced, so doing a compare-contrast episode wasn't even on the tables, but seeing how the game is finally released, I was wondering if I should do a compare-contrast episode of this game. Well, seeing how this video exist, I think the answer should be fairly obvious. I don't think I'll be doing a whole lot of these remakes, especially since I did Battle for Bikini Bottom vs. the movie game pretty recently too, but considering how I honestly love the first game so much, I feel obliged to compare this original to the rehydrated version. Hey, if the movie somehow gets rehydrated as well, I wouldn't be surprised if I also do a compare and contrast episode of that as well. I'm not going to repeat most of my criticism and praises I've mentioned in my previous episode. If you want my full opinion on it, I'd recommend watching that episode. This episode will compare and contrast the differences in terms of graphics and gameplay on what I find better in either version. I think it's also fair that I skip over the story of the segment since it's pretty much the same as the original. But if you want a quick summary of how I feel the game presents itself in terms of how to experience the story, it's SpongeBob, not BioShock. You're not going to get some philosophical morals and themes that makes the player think and feel. You're just a normal citizen of Bikini Bottom fighting robot hordes with 2 of your best friends. That's as basic as a bread and butter combo. I'll be doing more of a scoring system this time around, so on a scale of 1 to 10 to each category, that's how I'm going to grade them for each game. Right now it's still fair game since the remake doesn't really change much in terms of the narrative. For the sake of this video, I'll be grading both games via gameplay and presentation. Right now it's still fair game since the remake doesn't really change much of its narrative, so I'll just give 6 points for both games in terms of story. So without further ado, this is SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom versus SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. You play as 3 playable characters, SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy, with Patrick and Sandy being exclusive to certain levels and SpongeBob naturally being the one you'll play the most throughout your journey. With an array of movesets, he can conjure up multiple bubble attacks like the Bubble Bash, Bubble Bowl, and also the destructive Cruise Missile. He is without a doubt the most versatile character in the game. This is, after all, named after him. You don't think this title is Squidward Tentacles Battle for Bikini Bottom, do you? Physics are not exactly 1-to-1 between each game though. The camera angle for Rehydrated is a lot more zoomed out compared to the OG BFBB, and some layouts are slightly altered in order to fit well with the setting of the remake, like this spatula in Mr. Krabs Dream, where originally you can cheese through it by attacking each Duplicatotron. This time they have barriers so you can't cheese through it. Sandy doesn't have the same aerial momentum. In fact, she is wild when lassoing Texas Icon and makes her go even more absurdly far when you utilize it. I don't like how you had to hold the button in order to grab the Texas Icon, along with, well, pretty much everything else. I prefer controlling Sandy in the original version since she has the control down right when gliding and platforming, but I do like her offensive capabilities as she is able to handle enemies a lot faster. They buffed her attack speed, gave her more aerial attacks. The developers handled her transition in combat very well, but that's only for combat. In terms of platforming, I still prefer the original. You only need to press the lasso button once if you want to swing through the Texas Icons. It also helps that momentum is a lot more controlled in the original when you swing through it. Every time I swing through the Texas Icon in the remake, it feels weird, especially if you have to navigate with the camera controls as well. Although I will say the remake does a better job at Patrick overall. I've never been a huge fan of playing as Patrick, and while he's still my least favorite to play even on the remake, they gave him the speed needed for traversal, gave him an aerial attack not just to attack airborne enemies but for ease of platforming, and gave him a new ground pound attack depending on how high Patrick is from the ground. Puzzles revolving around him still kinda suck when he's utilizing watermelon watermelons, but they simplified his aiming by including a reticle on exactly where he will throw the melon. The original had this as well, but only for buttons and enemies. They streamlined it in the remake to make sure the player knows exactly where they'll aim. That leads us to our main protagonist, SpongeBob. You're able to attack twice in the air to suspend yourself for more distance compared to the original where it's only a one-time use. His bubble bowl is a lot more easier to aim in the remake compared to the original. I think the biggest advantage for the original is the cruise boost exploit, which for some reason I can no longer do. It's f***ing impossible. I've already done that in the original video. It requires 2 frame-perfect inputs. It was tough, but if you manage to initiate the glitch, SpongeBob can perform his way through nearly everything thanks to his boost in speed and higher momentum. He's hard as balls to control, but once you get the hang of it, playing as him looks exhilarating. Of course, this being a glitch, they patched the sucker right out in the Rehydrated version, so there's no way you could reach the same speed and aerial platforming in the remake.
Now, this is mostly for speedrun tech. Unless you're that dedicated to playing this game, you won't be able to perform this casually. Speaking of which, for the remake, I'm kinda curious as to how the speedrun evolves without the inclusion of cruise boost. Huh. I guess we didn't need cruise boost after all.
I don't know how to feel about this. I mean, on one hand, there's no way you'd probably find this glitch out casually, but this completely demolishes the any percent category. Sure, there's multiple different categories like 77% and 100% speedruns, but I found the beauty behind the original game was the progression of how any percent evolved, and now, well, it sort of feels stagnated. To perform this glitch, you require 2 controllers, or if you're playing on a PC, a controller and a keyboard will do. When you hover to the Chum bucket level in the menu screen, you press 2 confirm inputs at the same time using 2 different controllers, and now you can fast travel to that level even with all the power-ups intact. To this day, this glitch is still not patched, so you can still perform this glitch if you want. It's pretty funny how a big oversight like this managed to get past testing, but the speedrun community sort of turned this into a positive rather than a negative, so hey, I guess it doesn't hurt anyone.
One new feature that Rehydrated did implement is the addition of multiplayer. It's not that good.
You get to play a variety of different characters in a sort of horde mode like combat. Squidward is probably the most broken due to his projectiles, and it's amusing to see Gary somehow kicking with his snail-like features. But this isn't by all means the best game mode out there. In short, it is too simplistic to get into. You can try it maybe once with a friend, but I don't see myself ever revisiting this mode due to how boring it is. It's weird too, they built up the idea of re-implementing old boss designs from Robot Squidward as a new way to play the game, but it honestly felt more of a disappointment now that we know what the boss is all about. I guess on top of boss battles, most of them seem to get a pretty big overhaul. The instructions are a lot more clear on how to beat the boss. The overall pacing of the battle leads to some thrilling action, but they didn't accommodate for the new physics engine. Trying to lasso the Texas icon during Robot Patrick's battle? My right hand's already cramped. It's also a pain to avoid Robot Sandy's springs. Camera is too zoomed in, so I don't know where exactly to avoid them. I keep on getting hit. Thankfully, I could kinda mitigate this by having her preemptively strike before the attack commences. There's one major change that Purple Lamp Studios decided to do to, I guess, extend the game's playtime. If you do any of the Mr. Krabs' Golden Spatula, you should know that's literally just shiny hunting. You give him a certain amount of shiny objects, and the next spatula increases the price by 500 shiny objects. These spatulas suck in the original, and they somehow made it worse in the remake. Instead of 500 increments, it's now 3,000. There's 8 golden spatulas in total for Mr. Krabs. Do the math. As a minimum, I recommend to just beat the game, or at the very least, get all the golden spatulas minus Mr. Krabs. Doing the shiny hunting takes way too much time, more so if you're playing on the remake. Overall, I'm sort of in the camp of liking the overall physics for the original more. Sure, Patrick gets a full-blown upgrade that he deserves, but I sort of like controlling Sandy and SpongeBob more in the original. The physics feel fluid and the controls feel nice, from the platforming, the bungee jump physics. Not to say that the remake controls badly by any means, the SpongeBob physics is an overall improvement, the bowling of the SpongeBob feels a lot more accurate, but I'd sacrifice that to have the same physics as the original had. I'll give the original a 9 and the remake a 7 in terms of gameplay. I think I was more critical on the original's graphics for looking too bleak at points, with Kelp Forest being one of the few examples of toned down colors and low quality textures. So it's no surprise that I prefer the new style. Of course, it being on new generation hardware helps, but the colors pop out more, the animation feels a lot more fluid, and the in-game dialogue has some extra personality with their own custom animations. At least for some of them. Unfortunately, the remake also pertains some flaws the original had in terms of animation, like reusing some animation cues from different cutscenes, and the reusing of voice clips from the original. Now, to be fair, the original voice dialogue is pretty damn good, but the voice clips that did need work, like the entirety of Mr. Krabs and Mermaid Man, they could have performed better. Even though I understand why they couldn't replace Mermaid Man's voice since the original voice actor passed away, is Clancy Brown really that expensive to hire? They got him for the movie game for like one line. Geez, maybe he really is an expensive actor. Now, Mrs. Puff is somewhat of an interesting exception. Her character model overall is better in the remake, giving her more of a normal stance compared to this crack addict. But there was one cutscene where the crack addict behavior actually adds to the humor.
Why do you want all that artwork?
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared to handle the answer to.
The zoom in Mrs. Puff's energetic face just sells that for me, and here's the remake.
Why do you want all that artwork?
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared to handle the answer to.
The demeanor is gone, Mrs. Puff is too happy, and they remove the zoom in. This is the most standout example of the remake neutering the original, but it honestly depends from cutscene to cutscene. I like Patrick's dream in the remake, but I also think the battle against King Jellyfish is better in the original. In a way, it's sort of balancing things out between the two, but as a remake, I was hoping for overall improvement rather than cherry pickings. But even with the design decisions of reusing audio files, some questionable sound cues, and some animation changes, the game looks overall beautiful and colorful. The times where animation does improve, I much prefer viewing them. As a remake, it does its job wondrously for a game designed for new generation hardware. I'd give the original a 6 and the remake an 8.
I can't stress enough how much I love these two games. With me completing the original a second time for this review and Rehydrated twice, one on my PS4 and PC copy, isn't enough of an indication to tell you guys how much I enjoy these two games. I don't know how much I could dedicate myself any further. Now, admittedly, even though the results ended in a tie, I personally like the original slightly more, but that could be mainly nostalgia talking to me. The remake is not a bad option by any means. If you can get this game, I definitely recommend it. I will say, wait for a price drop though. Even if I think 30 bucks is good enough of a price tag for the game, for those who are on the fence of whether or not to give this game a try, I'd say wait for a price drop to try it out. Otherwise, definitely give this game a try. This game is available on PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. If I could give which version a recommendation, try to get the PC version if your PC can handle the game. It is the best version out of the four. The Switch copy may be a turn-off though. I've heard some bad things about it, like the swap of jump buttons and the frame rate issues. Hopefully those could get patched, but if not, the Switch port should only be your last resort if you don't own an Xbox One, PS4, or PC. It may not be the pinnacle of 3D platformers or even the best remake in the market, but it's still an enjoyable game that I'm pretty sure anyone playing this game will enjoy it as much as I do. What the f*** are those guys on? Did they even play the same game?